I think it talk with him today. In this segment, we have Mr. Swami Goswami, who is a partner with PwC, and he's been with the company for 18 years. Mr. Goswami leads the front office transformation and the Microsoft practice nationally. He's also part of the technology leadership team and consulting leadership team of PwC India. His focus areas are helping organizations transform and embark upon technology-led transformation. Before I hand over the proceedings to Mr. Goswami, I would like to remind our audience and other members to keep their microphones on mute when the discussion is going on. We will be taking questions post the conversation, and I request the members who want to ask questions to raise their hand, and we will be taking on these questions live. Over to you, Mr. Goswami.
Thank you. Thanks, Anirban. Am I audible to everyone? Are you able to
Yes, you are,
hear
Mr.
me?
Goswami.
Okay, lovely. So a very warm welcome, participants, today on this apt chat show, but it gives me goosebumps. And it gives me goosebumps because I've been asked to anchor the show for the Bradman of this game. And I only hope by the end of this session, the participants gives me at least some pass mark. So welcome, Vikram. Great to know you. We have grown up, seeing you anchoring some of the India's best shows, starting from intense poll analysis to Save the Tigers to a true techie that you are, which has shown up as you would have launched Editor G, which is a true technology-based news house. To set the context, participants, the onset of this pandemic has actually challenged various business models. The boardroom conversations have changed. All the plans, all the strategies that were drawn up, till 6 weeks back are out of window. Now is the new normal. The new normal talks about conducting business differently. The new normal talks about us trying to adopt to the way of working in a different manner. Gone will be the days where all of us probably will be in office in one shot in the near run, but business has to come back. If you talk to any CEO in today's context, they only are talking about three things, because for everybody, this pandemic has brought us to ground zero. It's about survive, sustain, and surge. On that note, can I kick off? Vikram, you launched Editor G, giving up a pretty stable business house, NDTV. You used to be the CEO of that company. Tell me, you are talking about bringing user experience to people in terms of catering to news that they would need, and they would need it differently. And you have launched Editor G, totally based on technology, which we consultants keep talking about: AI, machine learning, digital tools, etc., etc. Why did you even think about it? And what made you think technology will get adopted for something like media and broadcasting in a different manner?
Well, Swami, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for that really, a warm welcome, and for those very kind words, which I'm not sure I entirely deserve. But I think you touched upon a very important point. And I would like to spend a few minutes actually talking about this, because this is something which is very dear from my heart. Right from day one, even when I was at NDTV as a journalist or as an anchor in the early 1990s, I always was fascinated by the march of technology. And for me, it was always clear that we are on an unstoppable path. We talk about the exponential path that the virus is taking. There's an exponential path that technology is taking, and that path is going to change everything. And it's been clear to me for a very long period of time that you either embrace that, you welcome it, you ride that wave as it comes. Sometimes the wave will be later, sometimes it will be faster than when you think it's going to happen. but there is a wave, and there's not just one wave, there are a series of waves that are coming. And you've got to ride those waves, and that's the only way that you can really transform yourself and you can transform your businesses. Now, I'll go back a little bit in my own life to give you examples of that. When I finished at Oxford and at Stanford, and I wanted to come back to India in '91, and I wanted to be a journalist, I said I'm going to try and be a TV journalist. And everyone said, "Why, oh, TV journalist? You've got to be crazy. What's a TV? There's no such thing as TV journalism in India." In 1991, there was no such thing as TV journalism in India. There was Doordarshan and there was print publications, and no one had ever heard of a TV journalist in India. So I joined News Track, and we did stuff like that, right, which was on cassettes. Then when private news television channels and all started off, and I did that for a certain period of time, by 1999, I was already sort of starting to see the next wave, which was, oh my God, digital and internet. And that's when I almost stopped doing a lot of my reporting and my anchoring and moved into setting up and launching ndtv.com, which I did for a very, very long period of time. About 5-6 years ago, it became increasingly clear to me that all the business models, all the formats, everything that was happening in mainstream media as we know it was going to be faced with problems, and especially around video news. And I'm happy to elaborate on this a little later, depending on how much interest there is. But it became increasingly clear to me that video news, sorry, is that mine? Video news as we know it is going to change. Sorry, is that me coming, or is that echo coming from somewhere else? Okay, doesn't matter. I'll just carry on. And again, I felt the changes that were happening were things that I didn't feel we could settle in an established media house. Because an established media house is always more, you've got your own turf to protect, you've got your TV channels, and you say, oh, I have to keep my TV channels going, I have to keep my print publications going, I have to get something going. And I think the true catalyst to answer your question about why did I decide to take the jump, it happened on a particular date when I was actually interviewing Sundar Pichai of Google, and we were discussing waves. And he said every 10 years, so it was an interview that I was doing here in Delhi, and he said every 10 years there's a wave. And in that conversation, he said we had the computer wave, then we had the internet wave, then we had the mobile wave, now we're having the AI wave. And I started to laugh a little bit. I said, now come on, no, Mr. Pichai, AI, it's an interesting concept, but frankly, is it really making a difference to people's lives? And he said something to me, which in a sense was literally life-changing. He said, no, you're not understanding. AI by itself may or may not be game-changing, but when people with domain knowledge in individual areas decide to say, how can we use AI and technologies like AI to change our own business? That's when the revolution is happening, and I can see that starting to happen. And that really, because I've been cribbing about how bad television news was for a long period of time, and I'm sure all of you would in some form or the other agree with that. And that's when really the idea came that, okay, maybe there's a point to that, and maybe we should try and find what is the path. If TV news is broken and there's no other good format that exists right now, what should the technologies and the formats of the future be? And that's what we started to build while building Heritage. And to be honest, we thought there would be time, we thought it would take time to adopt, we thought all of that would happen. Obviously, we weren't anticipating the pandemic, but to that extent, I think the pandemic has underlined what we were saying. You've got to be prepared for radical exponential change. Sometimes it will happen because of business models, sometimes it will happen because of new technologies, and sometimes it will happen because of a pandemic. So in our case, and I'm happy to talk about this more if there is interest, but in our case, the pandemic has in a sense underlined all the themes and concepts that we've been talking about for 3 years. You need to move, you need to change fast, you need to be prepared to jettison everything that you think is the way to do business. You need to be prepared to smash user experiences and form factors just because they've been around for 50 years. Why are people watching TV news? I don't know. Somebody give me a good reason why you can't. Well, look at what we're doing right now. I mean, we're having a webinar. We're having it on Zoom. We're talking to each other. All of us have been able to do it just from home. To do this normally, it would have taken a lot of time and effort to get us all together. We'd have all had to commute. We'd have all had to gather in a particular city. and we would have had to have conversation. In what way is this any worse than what we would have done 2 months ago?
Fantastic, Vikram, great perspective. On a lighter note, if I may be allowed, to say, Vikram, I think you got bored of the cacophony and multiple screens handling, and probably edited.
I wasn't doing that anyway, and I would have never done it.
So edited gives you a better peace of mind. Coming to the next question.
Tired and gone and become a bartender.
Good one. So, coming to the same thing that you spoke about, if you look at your own business of media, there are 3 C's that plays an important role. It is the content, it is the curation, and the creativity. I can understand the content of technology. I can understand curation being done with technology. What about the creativity? How do you say that I will be able to match the user experience individually of so many participants on this webinar itself and cater to their need, the way they want to see views, they want to see videos, they want to absorb news?
That's exactly where the AI part, in a sense, kicks in, and that was the radical eureka moment for me. And let me actually elaborate on that for a few minutes, if everyone's got the patience for it, because I think it was a very interesting journey. Frankly, it's been the most interesting 3 years of my life, just trying to sort this out. Now, this is the way it works. If you are in a particular business and you realize that things are not working, right? What do? Do you make incremental changes, or do you try to smash the model completely? Now, in my business, which was video news or television news at that time, and video news in general, the model was broken. Why? Because television news, it's not getting subscription money, it's not getting too many advertising, you're paying carriage fees. So the only way you make money on television news is by advertising, which comes from TRPs. The only way to get TRPs is to yell and scream at people, which is not good for anything. I don't think the audiences like it too much. That's the way you get TRPs. And because you're getting TRPs, you have the ability to go to advertisers and say, I have TRPs, so therefore, allow this to continue. But that's fundamentally unsatisfying. So television news, for that reason, is sliding. Every single session I have attended with people, and I'm happy to put this open to this group also, how many of you think that the quality of television news has deteriorated alarmingly? I can't see the other participants, but I'm assuming most of them would be raising their hands and saying, yes, I think it has slid. So that doesn't work. Then let's look at the other possibility, which is digital video news. Now, digital video news, why is that not working? And the answer to my mind was because the user experience is bad. You're asking people, what do people want? They want information. What does information mean? In a day, you want 30 pieces of basic information that are telling you this is what's happening in the world. When you get up in the morning, I want 20, 30 pieces of information. In the evening, 20, 30 pieces of information, which is informing me about what's happening in the world. Are you getting that on television? No, you're not. Are you getting that on digital formats, digital video formats? No, you're not, because existing digital video news formats is saying, go to a site like Times of India or Indie TV or whatever it is, find the stories you want and click on a particular tab. And when you click on that tab, that story will play. But that is painful to do. You don't mind doing that on Netflix or on Amazon Prime, because once you clicked on the tab, you can then sit back and watch a show for 30 minutes. So you don't mind it, right? It's okay. But to say tap on 30 different icons to get the video news that you want, no one is going to do it, and no one was doing it. And that's the reason why digital video news hadn't really taken off. It also presupposed that you had to know what the stories were, because that's the only way you'd go searching for them. So what is actually happening was, and this is what I mean by, when you make incremental changes to existing business models and you think that that's the answer, it doesn't work. What's actually happening across every OTT player and across all streaming platforms, and it's happening even today, people are watching live television news channels on connected streaming devices. And if you think about it, that's absurd. It's like having a Ferrari and saying, I'm going to get a horse to pull it. Like, why would you do that? You have a connected device which can give you AI and personalization and localization and the ability to customize content and to have different things. And what are you doing? You're streaming a live television news channel on that with all the problems that live television channels that I just outlined. So that is why you need to be prepared to smash the models completely and say, let's do something completely different. And for us, we found our answer in music. And it's an interesting thing. Where you will get your inspiration from is maybe very different. You may think I'm in this field, and therefore I should be getting the experience and ideas from what the other people in the news business are doing. For us, we got our inspiration from music. What we told ourselves is that take a look at a company like Spotify. Now, take music. Very similar, right? Television news is like radio. You switch it on and then you have to watch whatever, listen to or watch whatever garbage is being put out. Digital video news at that time was like, or even now, digital video news is in many ways like cassettes and CDs. You can find the right song, you can find the right stories, but you've got to go searching for it. Now in music, none of us do that anymore. In music, what do? Is we go to Spotify or Apple Music or Ghana or whatever it is, and there is AI will find a playlist that is suited for you. And that's what you will probably listen to. And if you're not in the mood for that, you'll get human curated playlists also there, which you can go and listen to, or you can get your friends will have a playlist which you can go listen to. So once you get that sort of a thought and you say, okay, how do we apply that into the field of digital video news? And that's really what was for us, at least in many ways, the game changer several years ago. So we said, we're not going to follow news. We're not going to follow television. We're not going to follow.
Conference is being recorded.
What you were saying about the 3 C's and the way the 3 C's actually operate. We said, why do we have to be guided by any of that? In today's day and age, with modern technology, with connected devices, with the digital revolution around us, why do we need to do any of that? Why do we need to have a reporter? Editor-G has no reporters. Not a single reporter. We don't have an OB van. We don't think that is needed. We don't even have discussions and debates because people are coming to us. Not if you want discussion debates, you'll find plenty of them. They want information. They want 30 pieces of news. And that is, if you want to give people what they want to do, you should be prepared to smash the model completely.
Thanks, Vikram. It brings a very interesting perspective because you mentioned things like Ghana and Spotify. When a radical shift like this happens, you need to leverage the ecosystem around you.
Yeah.
And one area where I always thought we have not leveraged the ecosystem or platforms in a big manner is education in India. Do you think that this is a time when even the way we are imparting education will take a radical shift and technology will become a platform to impart more and more of education and higher education more important? I think schools, etc., have started doing certain things in limited means, but where do you see somebody like you, your platform, also extending that to say, here I am, who can also bring that ecosystem play to radically shift the way education is getting imparted in the country, skilling is getting imparted in the country? So
let me answer that in 2 parts. First of all, you are completely and totally correct. And I wish I had spoken to you 2.5 years ago. We'd have saved some time and some money. We recognized at some point about a year and a half ago, that look, we can't try and do this by ourselves, and we shouldn't try and do this by ourselves. But essentially, that just means the problem is in today's day and age, when you try and do new digital things, quite often, and you're trying to build a B2C business, it quite often means just paying a lot of money to Google and Facebook because you're just running advertising, trying to do customer acquisition. And you can go on raising money and telling investors, oh, isn't it great? I have 1 million users, 2 million users, 3 million users, but that's all because you're paying to get those users. And then when that pipeline dries up or your money runs out, or you say, why am I paying Google so much money? Then suddenly your traffic goes down and you're in some sort of crisis. So that didn't make sense. So for us, the model became very clearly a year and a half ago that we are going to work with partners. We're going to work with the ecosystem in the manner that you said. And that's pretty much what we are doing. So, Airtel's an investor. We are very closely integrated into Airtel. We're very closely integrated into other partners like Alexa, where we run a lot of things for Alexa. Twitter is a key partner. Hindustan Times is a key partner. Times of India Group, and we are having advanced conversations with a bunch of things. So we work with partners to figure out how to do it. That's the first part of my answer. Second part of my answer is yes, when it comes to, education is the prime example. Why are we educating people in the manner that we are? Other than one major issue, you're having a situation like, with my younger son who is who's ostensibly attending Zoom classes, but sometimes when you walk into his room, you find him suspiciously under a razai, with the Zoom class going on. You have to say, look, are you sure you're really attending this? So you've got to figure out ways around that, right? Are people, when you switch off the camera, are people actually listening to what we are saying right now, or is something else happening? So that's one issue. But on the other hand, you have an example like my elder son, who's flown back to India from Johns Hopkins, and he's sitting here and doing all the research, all the work, everything that had to be done. He's doing it here. He's working on America time and functioning perfectly smoothly on long distance. He doesn't have to be sitting in Baltimore right now in the middle of whatever is happening. And he's working with his professors. Everything is functioning smoothly. So education is a perfect example of how business is going to change. Medicine is going to change. Everything is going to change, and it's not just because of the pandemic. Everything is going to change in any case, because that's the way exponential technology is rolling itself out. And from our point of view, 100% we want to talk with partners. So we are open. We have figured out how to reduce all information. That's our core secret sauce. We can reduce any information in any field into component building blocks. And once we've reduced it to that, we can use algorithms to assemble it and to disseminate it in a certain manner. Now, with that basic concept in place, we can partner with anybody. We can partner with a publishing house. We can partner with an education company. We can partner with a medical company. We are partnering with social media companies. So, yes. And I think that's what every single company has to be prepared to do going forward.
Thanks, Vikram. And I think you would have touched the nerves of a lot of parents on this call who are still figuring out what the kids are doing locked in a room with all the excuses of online classes and Zoom. So I'm sure you have made some of them smile as well. Coming to next, it's very interesting to hear the ecosystem play. One area where we feel technology will surge in a big way and also challenge the model in the country is medical, and you touched upon that.
Yeah.
The user experience there with all this pandemic for certain kind of diseases needs to change, where an elderly person getting treated for a long haul treatment need not go to a hospital every now and then because they will be prone to infection. Are you hearing things changing drastically there, or we are still going to say digital transformation, but conventional methods still stay?
I hope people should be prepared to, welcome the change. It's interesting what you say, because about 2 to 3 years ago, just after I had launched Editor-G 2 years ago, I was actually on the road a lot. I was talking at a large number of conferences. I was doing some speaking assignments. And one of the key things that I would constantly talk about was the fact that the pace of technological advance is happening at a rate that people do not understand. And it's the rate of doubling. And we're hearing the rate of doubling so much now when it comes to the virus, but the rate of doubling of technological advance has been happening for a long, long period of time. And in many of these areas, AI, biotech, medical, changes in the way medicine is done, changes in the way education is done, changes in the way media should be done, changes in field after field. That doubling process has been on now for a long period of time. And a year and a half ago, I was already arguing that we are about to approach an inflection point. And that time was obviously without the pandemic and coronavirus. So it was already my belief that by the time I don't know what the date was. It could be 2020, it could have been 2023, it could have been 2024. But at some point I felt that in industry after industry, just the pace of exponential advance of technology, or the pace of advance of exponential technology, to be more strictly accurate, would reach an inflection point where every one of these businesses would suddenly change almost overnight. Now, what I think has happened with coronavirus is it's like a line out there. So then suddenly everyone, whether they like it or not, has been forced to do it. Because a year and a half ago, I used to feel as if, in a sense, you're shouting a little bit in the dark when you're going on saying, everything is changing, and in my field, digital media is going to be here, and streaming is going to be everything. And as you said, in medicine, you've got to think about new things. You've got to think about how AI will be used. You've got to think about biotech. You've got to think about advancing cycles of drug discovery and vaccine discovery. You've got to think about using AI as a diagnostic tool. All of those were obvious things. But to some extent, everyone was sort of almost pushing it behind them and saying, hoga, I'll think about it at the right time. And the positive outcome of coronavirus is going to be that no one can now say, yes, we'll think about it at the right time. What do you think about it now?
Lovely, Vikram. So that brings me to a very interesting point to talk to. Every user experience that you speak about, every technology that you speak about, serving client or customer, with that customer centricity where you're trying to get as much close to him or her, puts my personal data on the block. You must be talking to several policymakers. And data protection will become a big conversation post this pandemic, the way business models are going to change. How does that play in? Because adoption of any technology is also directly proportional to the kind of rules, regulatory aspects which play out. They will be thinking twice before doing something differently because they will feel that their personal data can get compromised. Would like to hear some views on this from you.
So I think this is going to be one of those areas in which there is no clear-cut answer. There's no defined way of how do you deal with it. I think, and again, it's not coronavirus linked. I think for many years now, people have been worrying about the data that you're putting out. You should, in some cases, people are being ridiculously free with their data for matters, for things that fundamentally don't count. Like, you got a nice app which is going to aid you, and so you say, okay, that's okay, guys, take access to all my photographs, take access to all my data to some random software developer sitting in Russia somewhere. People just do it, and it's not clear to me as to why you would do that, but they do it. Now, forget about what people are doing with private parties. That's true. So how much power are you going to give to private parties is one question. How much power are you going to give to the big tech companies is a second question. Now, some of it may be unavoidable. For example, like a mobile company, right? So Airtel is a key partner of ours, and we're going to start working with Jio and others also. But the amount of data that they have on you just because they know where your phone has been, right? So whether you like it or not, they have a certain amount of data on you. So that's one. The amount of data that's being shared with foreign companies, with foreign countries. And just to, and I'm saying all of this because I think each of these is going to be areas where there's going to be a debate. Now look at the third one. Many in the government of India were almost blissfully unaware till 3 years ago. And I remember being called in many times by the highest levels in the government to be asked about this. And they said, and they were sort of asking this question, how much control do you think a country like China, for example, has on the digital ecosystem in India? And I used to tell people, and they used to literally fall off their chair in shock. I said, do you know that China controls 75% of all digital news and information in India right now? And they used to fall off their chair and say, what are you saying? I said, it's true. Look at the data 3-4 years ago. You see news, you see browser, apps like NewsDog and others, now TikTok, others have that. Now, that means that a lot of the Chinese are controlling what people in India are seeing and watching and what they believe to be the news. And I think as the government recognized that, suddenly that's when all this paranoia came about, how much control are we giving to China in the news space. So that's foreign countries. And fourth, and perhaps many people would say the most important is, what about the government itself? Now, we're doing contact tracing, everyone's getting Arogya Setu, which is maybe the best thing to do. That's great. But are there genuine privacy concerns? Yes. Does the government have the ability to track you forever? Perhaps it does. Is the government listening to every conversation that you're having? Possible. So what are you going to do about that?
Brings to an interesting question around So we're talking about mostly adopting various cloud technologies. And today, every business is talking about putting everything on cloud. You started a new company and you had to wear a very different hat. A hat where you had to look at every penny that you would like to spend. How would you like to spend? Where would you like to spend? When it comes to judging on return on investment on technology like this in today's world, what would you look at? And what would be your certain insight to all of us saying that if you are a technology player, wearing the customer lens, what we should be looking at to serve you better?
So that's a really good question. And let me tell you, I, for starters, am a complete and total believer. And the experience of the last 3 years has underlined that even more. I'm a great believer in cloud technologies, right? I think this entire concept that a company needed to have a large IT department and a large AI department and a large this department and a large that department and everything has to be done within the company. I think that notion should be discarded. You know, it dates back 10 years or 15 years. And as far as I'm concerned, that's like the Jurassic era. So the interesting statistic, which very few people find it very difficult to believe when they look at like Editor G, let's say we have 70 people right now. Of that, 65 of the 70 people, give or take, would be journalists and editors and people working on all of that. You know, how many people do we have in IT on our roles? How many people do we have doing tech on our roles? Even AI, design, so many finance, so many of these functions can be outsourced very efficiently. So many of these functions can be run on the cloud. Now, in our case, we had a very early conversation with companies like Akamai and AWS, which was, it was just so painless. We had to just say, this is what we need to do. This is how we need to do it. And that's it, you're up and running. Now, the biggest advantage of doing that for us, actually the most decisive moment when it became so clear to us that what we were doing was correct, was when the lockdown happened. We shifted from being, we are essential services, we're a news company, so theoretically we could all go to work. But we said, you know, it's a pain. A lot of our workers are in Noida, some are in Gurgaon, the headquarters are in Delhi. How are we going to get people together? Why are we putting people in the risk? We went overnight, literally overnight, from 100% work in office to 100% work from home. And you know what happened to our productivity? It didn't go down by 1%. Within 5 days, our productivity is 25% higher than it was before the lockdown, 25% higher. And we don't understand it, frankly. And we're looking at it and saying, why the hell is this happening? Why is productivity 25% higher? And the answer eventually came to us saying that, look, people are probably saving a lot of time on commute. And because they're saving on time on commute, they don't mind working extra hours at home, which they do. They're on call all the time. And they don't mind working on that 5-day, 6-day week concept is sort of blown away. Nobody really cares. You're working from home anyway, so whether it's a Thursday or a Saturday, no one cares. You don't mind working 6-day weeks. So all of that put together means that productivity is up. And that, I think, is where the opportunity for all of you really comes in, that as you make it more and more easy for companies to adopt that, as you make it more and more cost effective for companies to adopt that. And in my view, it will be cost effective. And I think every single company is, and we believed in it for 2 years, and I haven't regretted it ever. I mean, literally, I've never regretted it. Not having set up our own businesses for our own in-house teams for all of this, to just do it on the cloud, and it works fine. Just obviously, as all of you improve your services, cloud services and all much better, you make it easier for us, to make it menu-based, to make it very simple to be doing and running it from home. The servicing of the clients becomes better. And above all, the price points become attractive. And that's not a difficult thing to achieve. Because of the economies of scale, you will reach a situation where it is much cheaper and much more efficient for me to outsource everything than to do it ourselves. That's when everyone will do it. And then from your point of view and for other people's points of view, that scale means that you can offer those services at lower and lower costs. Soumik?
I think there was some disturbance.
Yeah.
Can you hear me, Vikram?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. Nice perspective, Vikram. I think, Anirban, how are we doing on time? Do we have, I had a couple of questions for Vikram before I hand it over to the participants. So should I go ahead? Do we have 2-3 minutes more?
Please go ahead.
So Vikram, we have seen you from Davos in good times. If you were to report from Davos to us today, wearing this new entrepreneur hat, what would be your 2 key messages for all of us on this webinar as we embark upon a real, true digital economy in few years to come?
I mean, look, from my point of view, the message is crystal clear that everything is changing. Everything is going to change. We've known that for a while. It's just that it's not that singularity that people keep talking about, and that that the time when the exponential curve really becomes vertical. It's not 20 years away. It's not 10 years away. It's now. And people who get it, and people who are prepared to change everything they know about how they run a business and everything that they think they know about what it is, I think they're going to win. Now, there's going to be a short-term crisis, and that's one last message that I want to leave out here is, I think all of this is great, and this exponential change is great and the rest of it, but obviously there's a message right now for the government also, because unfortunately, given that the corona, so there's a good and a bad side to coronavirus. Coronavirus, I mean, there's really no good side to coronavirus. Sorry, let me rephrase that. There's no good side to having a virus, killing the number of people it is. But there's a good side and a bad side to having an inflection point where you have to make radical changes. It forces people to make those changes, which may have happened in any case. In a sense, for a country like India, if we can adopt that change really fast, we can be ahead of the curve. And by the time that a year, 2 years, 3 years, you're certainly leading the process rather than following it. And just as an aside on that, we should not underestimate our ability to really drive that change. I've been struck by the fact that, for example, how does you use something like Alexa to say, Alexa, play me the news? And without wishing to blow our own trumpet a little bit, they have a team 400, 500 strong, which have been working for 4 years or 5 years on how to solve that problem. When they've been coming and visiting us over the last 1 year, they have said your product today is better than where we would be a year from now, right? Sort of a thing. So in some of these areas, and that's just one example. And obviously, these are fantastic, superb companies, and the way a company like Amazon or Alexa are going to be revolutionized by this is incredible. But in specific niche areas, like how does video news fit into the incredible things that you're doing? Maybe in some of those places, an Indian company can give a better answer, or a small startup can help solve big global problems better than even they can. We all know that the big tech companies are going to be winners when the time, and if I was in Davos, that's what I would be saying. I'm sure that's what I would be hearing in Davos, that the big tech companies and all of these, any tech company is going to be the big winner now after coronavirus. And I think we know that. But I think there is an opportunity for all of us. Even if you're a small company, even if you're a startup, even if you're not Amazon or Apple or Google or Facebook, you can always find individual niche areas where you can solve a problem, perhaps better than even they can. And that's the time when you should be able to build that and either partner with them or find a way to plug yourself into their systems and roll forward.
Amazing Vikram, and I don't know how this 30 minutes flew. A lot of participants are restless to, put their questions onto you. I would not stand in between them. So Anirban, we can probably take some questions from participants.
Sure. let me remind the audience that, people who want to ask questions, please raise your hand before you ask your question to Mr. Chandra. While we are waiting for you to raise your hand, Shomik, you had one more question from Mr. Chandra. You can go ahead and ask that.
Yeah, so one of the questions that was asked, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So one of the questions, Vikram, that was asked is this productivity spike temporary? While we are talking that we all were productive from home, was this temporary in nature?
Look, it's very possible. I mean, like I think there are improvements in productivity, but I don't know what's going to happen in the medium to long term. I mean, for starters, I believe that it's the government, and I've been saying this now for a long, long time. I think the government is really missing a trick by not coming out with some sort of a package or coming out with some liquidity support, because all of this is very interesting. Yeah, there'll be a productivity spike and the companies are going to do way well and startups are going to do X, Y, Z. No, all of that is great. But that presupposes that most companies and most things are going to be alive and on their feet 1 year from now. So I think we need to, the very first thing to do is make sure that MSMEs in particular and small companies and cash-strapped companies and companies that are facing debts, they must have an ability to, to live for the next 3 to 4 months. And only then will all of the other things start to kick in. And that's something for the government to do. And I'm sure they're thinking about it, liquidity support, working capital, soft loans. But I think they're delaying it a bit now. I think they need to do it very fast.
Thank you. Thanks. If we can get any other question from the participants.
I think Mr. Chandra has done excellent work in explaining a lot of the answers that people are still waiting to ask him questions. While we still wait for people to ask questions, I have one question because for Mr. Chandra, because I was a journalist and he's been my sort of somebody I can look up to. When I started my journalism career. So, I wanted to understand, when this whole TV revolution was happening, right? When we got into the business of using, softwares for doing different tasks, and Shomik asked a question about creativity. How would you say, a person could sort of, how would creativity ooze out of digital tools?
That's a really interesting question, because you've got to move, fundamentally you've got to be creative in different ways. So when I started my career, I was working for NewsTrack. I loved it. I loved the sort of journalism we did at that time, because it meant you could spend 2 months working on a story. I once did spend 2 months, 2 months, 3 months you could work on a story. You had 10 minutes to tell your story, and the creativity came from going out and reporting in the field and getting things in and telling a really good story. And for me, that was the best work I've ever done in my career. Television news in the last 7-8 years has got very little creativity. Like how much creativity do you require to shout at somebody and say, you're a whatever you. I don't have to tell you what's happening. So that doesn't require too much creativity. A lot of really talented people from the television industry have joined Editorgy, and we are finding creativity in a slightly different manner. And it's a question that I actually challenged the team with about a year and a half ago. We said, how can you tell a news story in 20 seconds without missing out? And the clear answer, which the entire team first had, and we brainstormed it a year and a half ago, they said it can't be done. There is no way a story can be told in less than a minute. That's the time it takes to tell a story. And we kept on having these town halls and debates and saying, no, it cannot be. 1 minute is too long. We need to build playlists with stories that are 20 seconds long. And the interesting thing is, as we worked at it and as we kept on trying it and as we found new ways of telling those stories, today, every one of our stories is less than 20 seconds. And in fact, we now have started finding restless when the story starts hitting the 20-second mark and we're saying, okay, can we do it in 17 seconds or 16 seconds? And we are now finding all the information is being captured. So creativity comes from different things.
So two questions related to this, Vikram. Two questions related to this, Vikram, which has come from participant. One, with media as an industry facing a huge turmoil, people leaving, we see a lot of people moving from one place to another. You see good content people getting eroded because the kind of news today is getting accepted is very different than an intense debate which will get you glued to your sofa for 2 hours.
So you're completely right. I think the media business is in deep crisis, and certainly certain aspects of the media business, like television news, for example, I don't see how that crisis is going to change for a simple, and one of the reasons why I left it 4 years ago now. 2016 is when I quit the TV news business. And it's for this reason, as I think Kunal very, very correctly is asking, you're faced with a shrinking of ad revenues. Ad revenues are also linked to TRPs. Why would you spend money in hiring good content writers, in hiring reporters, in sending them out to do stories from the field? What is happening in interior West Bengal? What's actually happening in Dharavi in the spread of the coronavirus? What is the situation in when it comes to delivering PPE, personal protective equipment to hospitals in Delhi? That's expensive things to do. Ads aren't coming in. It's much cheaper to just get one guest coordinator, get 3 guests to come on and yell at each other. Fine, that's cheap programming, and the study of the last 5-6 years has shown that you get higher TRPs from that than by doing good quality journalism. So every organization, for that reason, is doing exactly that. So the crisis that you are saying is a very real crisis, and I think good content writers, all of this is going to change. There's going to be a crisis because there is no fundamental business model which sustains it right now. So individual people will do it as a vanity exercise. But fundamentally, the problem is also going to be acute because good content producers will not get matched to their audiences. So there will be an audience for good quality content, but it's not being matched right now. When you put on the television news, you're not seeing, if people, let's say on this call say, but we would like good quality content. And we don't mind paying for it also. I don't want to see just hysteria or tabloid sensational content. How do you get it? That's the question. So one of the things that we and others like us are going to try and do is to start providing that bridge. And if you can give people personalized newscasts with small clips, you enable that to link through to the longer stories that have that good quality content that you're talking about. And that's when you can start perhaps monetizing.
So does that mean we get to see a Vikram Chandra robo in a few years' time in Editor-G?
No, you don't need a robo. There are robos who are doing, I mean, the AI is doing other stuff. The AI is assembling the newscast and putting it together. But what it would do is, if I'm putting out my newscast in the evening, right, on Editor-G or to our other partners, you would see a little snippet of that, saying that this is Vikram has done this, and Rajdeep has done this, and so else has done this, and somebody else has done this. Then, if that is coming up in a personalized newscast for you, you have the ability to click on those things and go to more content. And that can then start being paid for. And that's when you can go to advertisers also and tell them, this is a better way of reaching your audience than just running. I mean, look, I'm sure advertisers aren't happy. I'm sure, how could an advertiser be happy running 30 minutes of advertising per hour on, let's say, television news, where your ad is coming and your brand is coming up in the middle of all of that yelling and screaming, and there's no click through, there's nothing else. So I think there's an issue with that.
Vikram, so this whole pandemic has kind of divided the business scenario into two. There's a set of old economy companies, which was anyway going through a bit of a troubled time. And then there was the economy companies or the internet companies, etc. And both of them probably has been brought to ground zero. One will take more time to recover, probably, that is what we keep here. Depending upon the business model, what they want to do, how they want to do. Not everybody will come back to normal within one stipulated time. If I take about the old economy company, where technology adoption probably is still going up the curve and not peak, what would be your insight to them to say, do these three things right with the usage of technology, get back or to start getting back to normal? Is it productivity? Is it collaboration? Is it doing something different with technology? What would be your insight?
So I think you're completely right. There's going to be a scale, right? There's going to be a wide curve. So there is a curve of companies that are going to be old media technologies who cannot transform their business, but their business doesn't lend itself to suddenly becoming digital. I mean, take an airline. Now, what is a poor airline company going to do? Or, to suddenly say, okay, fine, we are going to be, can we shift all of our operations digitally? It can't be done because the basic job is ferrying humans from one place to the other. So they can mitigate the impact, but fundamentally they are going to be affected by this. They're going to be affected by this for a long time. So that's one extreme. Other extreme are digital native companies, whether it is companies like ours in the digital streaming and other businesses. For us, not only is there no problem, this is in many ways a boost for our business problems. And everyone else comes in a curve. And I think what every individual company is going to have to, and in this thing, I would also include all companies that are enabling things like work from home and digital and all of that sort of stuff, including, by the way, and I'm seeing this question that Dr. Soni has just put up, not everyone is comfortable with it. So yes, there will be people who may have a business model in making technology easily understood to people who are not technology savvy. Big area in that, by the way, also that they become almost like implementers. So to take your question forward, there's going to be a business model just in this, that to tell companies, hey guys, you're an old economy company, you don't get digital. This is how we can help you in transforming XYZ parts of your business into digital so you survive very easily. But most people don't get it. And that's honestly the truth. I've been struggling for the last year and a half in one of the areas is just to simply be able to convince enough people as to why, if you are a XYZ company in the media space or whatever, you need to change because all of this is going to happen. It's a struggle.
Thanks. So there's another question, Vikram, which says that, or it's probably an ask also from you, that through your platform, how can you make news more local, more focused local needs of the country than only focusing on top 3 national issues? Because the local people are extremely emotional and sentimental about how they are being looked at. And that is where we felt media during this whole pandemic probably could have done a bit better.
Media could have done a lot better, but actually bang on. And that's almost, that's something really close to my heart. And that's almost the core USP of everything that we are building. And the reason for that is actually very simple. Across the world, you get local video news because terrestrial broadcast is allowed. So what happens is, if you're sitting in Bangalore, you would be, if you're in America, for example, if you're in San Francisco, you watch KPIX. That's the local CBS affiliate, which is giving you local news. Now, what happens is your newscast in America, because it's terrestrial, you get some local news, you get some state news, and you get national news, and you get international news. That's the way it works with terrestrial television, terrestrial broadcasting. In India, terrestrial broadcasting is not allowed by law. So you have cable and satellite, which by definition means nationwide. So if you're programming on Aaj Tak or India Today or NDTV or Times Now or whatever you're broadcasting on, you by definition have to do a national newscast. What we are doing for the first time is, because we are breaking it up into component blocks, We can have a different newscast for somebody in Delhi as we do for somebody in Bombay, as we do for somebody in Kolkata, as we do for somebody in a rural part of interior Chhattisgarh. Every locality can have their own newscast. And that is done using technology on the device. So every person gets their own personal newscast. That's what really the core USP of what we're doing is.
So if I stitch something that I wanted to ask, sorry.
We're not there yet. We're not there yet, but that's a logical end goal of what we're doing.
So Vikram, you know, I wanted to stitch a question with something that I also wanted to ask you, was primarily around, if you look at yourself as a startup, leveraging technology in a big way. Probably 2 months back when you started your business, it was about customer acquisition. The needle probably has drastically moved to retention in these 45 to 50 days. And that will become, I think, every boardroom conversation, that how do we retain my client? How do I retain my customer? Because that will be an extremely important parameter to see how you sustain before you start actually surging or surviving. Where do you see technology coming into play in some of these?
Well, I have a slightly, at least from our point of view, I have a slightly different take on that. And it refers to what I was talking about.
That would be great to hear.
Yeah, in our personal viewpoint, we decided that we don't fundamentally view ourselves as a B2C company anymore. And this stopped before the election last year. Because to be a B2C company, it essentially means, as I was saying, you really are raising a lot of money in a constant treadmill. It's almost a valuation game, right? You go on raising a lot of money and you say, I'm getting customers and I'm retaining those customers and I'm doing blah, 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 blah. And you're constantly spending money on the App Store and on customer acquisition or customer retention for that matter. And that's your entire game. What we felt is that we have a certain product, we have a certain technology, we have a certain AI, we have a certain thought process. We are better off working with our customers are a handful of large companies and others with whom we are working to redefine their own experience and to answer their questions. We're in the business of providing solutions. So for us, retention, the customers whom we are really retaining, and we're retaining them just fine, are all of these companies, whether it is a Airtel or a HD or a Twitter or a Alexa or or a bunch of others with whom there's confidentiality agreements. But we are working with them on how to transform their businesses, including any company, including brands. So instead of my saying, oh, I have got this and I'm doing so much video advertising, so why don't you come to me and advertise? That's the existing model. That's what I mean by changing the model. Brands will then come and run plain vanilla ads on that and say, oh, isn't this great? Actually, it's not great because you're running it low, but no one's watching it. No one is clicking through. It's not giving a good experience. We would rather say, hello, Mr. Brand, what is it that you're wanting to do? What is it that you're trying to achieve? What is your goal? What are you trying to do? We will build a solution for you, custom-made solution for you, which is better than trying to buy off-the-shelf programmatic ads that are fundamentally not actually driving much value for anyone.
Great. So Anirban, can we open up to some more questions from participants if you have some?
I saw some in the chat group actually.
Yeah, we have some questions in the chat group. I think Shomik has managed to sort of revert to a few of them, and so have you. We would like to request any member out there, if they want to pose a question to Mr. Chandra, they can unmute themselves, state their name and company and ask a question directly to Mr. Chandra.
I think Mahesh just raised his hand.
Yeah, Hiten, can you sort of unmute Mahesh so he can pose his question?
He's unmuted.
Mahesh, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, Mahesh, please go ahead.
Mahesh, we can hear you. Please state your question for Mr. Chandra. I
I don't think I'm being able to hear him.
He must be struggling. Anyone else, Anirban?
we don't see anybody else raising their hand.
Hi, Kunal here.
Please go ahead, Kunal.
Hi, Kunal here from Raymond. Just want to understand how will a lot of old school organizations really relook at the way they've been branding themselves all these years with
I am sorry. You are not allowed to use conference service for one
hello.
or less
Hello.
participants.
Kunal,
Is it audible, sir?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Hello, Chandra sir. This is Mahesh Kumawat.
Somebody was just asking from Raymond, should we take that question first? You were asking, I think, how media, if I understand this correctly, you were basically asking a question about how old school companies or old economy companies should think about marketing and branding better. You know, it's got nothing to do with coronavirus by itself. So let me answer that question, then we can try and get Mahesh. Even I know with coronavirus, I feel every single company should be rethinking the way they are branding and advertising in any case. Because what are you doing right now? What have you been doing all this time? You've been running, and I'm not talking about GEC. I'm talking about your existing ways of putting your brands out. You're advertising on television news. Great. You've got these 20, 30-second ads that are running. Let's say they're running on news channels where they're coming in the middle of 8 to 9 other ads or 10 other ads in the middle of a 10-minute ad break. How many people are watching that? Is there any way of clicking and getting gratification? The answer is no, there isn't. If you're advertising in print, great, there's a certain reach and the rest of it. But again, is there any call to action that's possible? The answer is no, there isn't. So let's come to digital. Digital is where I think many people have been in any case saying, oh, we need to move digital. But in digital also, the problem is the entire game has almost been, let me do the cheapest programmatic ads and just somehow drive the brand. There's a more logical way of doing it. There are better ways of doing it. And I learned this in my early avatar when I was at NDTV, when we did what were called special projects, right? The amount of money people would spend on advertising got X value. But if I was in this group, for example, to tell people, Aircell, what do you think of Aircell? Tell me something that comes to mind when it comes to Aircell. Many of you would say, okay, telecom company that shut down. Many of you would suddenly say, save the tiger, right? And that's an example of how a company which may have spent hundreds of crores in advertising, but spent that little bit on sponsoring something like Save the Tiger. It was a targeted branded campaign, but it has very high recall value. The same is true for Greenathon and same is true for other things. So specific branded programs on occasion, and if you do it in a more targeted manner, in my view, that delivers very high returns. Now, maybe it does not compensate entirely from the businesses of, okay, I must do some GEC and I must do some, basic programmatic ads. But I think it's time for every major brand to say, let me set some money aside to do something in a more clever and a more targeted manner. And that's where you will find new companies. Heritage is one of them, but there are others who will find ways of, okay, we will find you the solutions that you want, and we will find ways of using AI to deliver what you want. And we work almost as consultants to say, what are you trying to achieve? Okay, this is how we can do it.
Great, thank you.
Okay, now Mahesh wanted to say something.
Hello, Chandra sir. Are you able to hear me, sir?
Yeah, Mahesh, we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Give me opportunity to speak with you, sir.
Lovely to talk to you.
Sir, my name is Mahesh Kumawat and I'm a cybersecurity consultant in my company. And sir, right now the situations, circumstances are some different. So how would I do the cost benefit analysis and business impact analysis on the cybersecurity scale?
Well, if you're working in the area of cybersecurity, all I can say is that the opportunity for you is so big, so massive, and you probably are a bigger expert in it than I am, so I don't want to really be telling you how it will work. All I can say is you should try and simplify for in your company. I'm sure you're doing a great job, but for the broader world, as everyone is doing these things like working from home and others, everyone is going to need advice and help in cybersecurity. So it's a great business model for someone out there to come in and say, we will provide a simple off-the-shelf solution, help you implement it overnight. This is how much we're going to charge, and we will take charge of your cybersecurity. Whoever does that is going to have an absolutely fantastic business model. Shamik, you're on mute.
Sorry, Vikram. Thanks, Mahesh, for that question. Anirban, do we have any more questions coming up?
I think we do have time for one last question before we sort of close the session. If anybody wishes to ask a question, please raise your hand. I think
somebody has raised. Somebody has raised.
Hiten, could you check the participant who has logged in with the initials AS?
Yeah. And can we have that question, the last question, please?
Yeah. Hello. Hi. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if Vikram could throw some light on the feasibility or the future of the local news, in the digital age, and also on the voice platform, because we have seen that nationalized media has actually failed to actually attend to localized news. I'm not talking about personalized news, but localized news in this time of crisis. And so is that more scope for that news can be not user generated, but generated by a certain business model in, which is more localized, because local businesses is going to still thrive?
Yeah, I think, look, where people have struggled, people have been talking about the desire to do local news or regional news now it's not new, it's been like 10 years, 20 years, maybe more, that people have felt this is going to be a very important requirement. Problem is that so far there's no clear business model that has really arisen in that, because it is still expensive, right? You still need to, there's a certain cost base. Do you recover that cost from localized businesses? At the moment, very few people are being able to do that. Does that mean that there will not be a business model going forward? No, it's very possible that there will be. It is one of the areas that we are looking at, that can we do some cost savings and some economies of scale, which can then be provided to local players. And if that happens, maybe there's a model. So the need is there, the requirement is there. I think the only question is around the business model. Can you get enough money from local businesses to be able to pay your bills?
Thanks. I think paucity of time, that was the last question before I hand it over to Anirban. Vikram, it has been a privilege for me to host somebody of your caliber, your experience, your knowledge, and I hope I was able to do justice to Anirban and Adobe on anchoring you for this. Some key takeaways for me, or learnings I would say for me is, one, in tough times, how do you smash models and think radically different? And make that happen was a great takeaway for me. Second, drawing inspiration from different companies, what they are doing differently. Doesn't have to be in your own field, but try to learn from others and see what you can implement for your business to make do things different. Third, the waves of digital revolution, the tools and technologies that will have to be adopted to serve your business. And most importantly, the geometric progression of technology advancement, which will push us